Today in the vlog, it's story time.
Hey, we putting on a shoot, trying to catch a vibe. We do this every time, like na 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 na. Feeling like I'm on the highway, cause everything been going my way. And now they looking at me sideways. I'm like na 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 na. This is where I wanna be, na na na. Never ever gonna leave.
All right, guys, the next couple of days, we're going to be going through kind of, story time. So I've already kind of gone into some of like my marketing past and how I got into like direct response marketing. But I'm just going to go through like the full business recap of how I got in and then out and then back in of doing like the whole online entrepreneur type thing. So today we start off actually not so much business, a little more of like my comic and film background and how that eventually led into business. So hope you enjoy. It's a little bit, the next few days are gonna be a little bit longer. They're right around 20 minutes or so. If that's not your thing, no worries. Just skip it or watch it on 2x speed. And next week we'll be back to probably more of the normal 5-minute or so vlogs. So let me know which ones you like better. Yeah, let me know. Right. So for me, this whole business heroes thing started off actually when I was super young. Like sometimes I forget how far back it goes. When I was super young, I wanted to have a comic book company. And what started off, I was raised, I'm raised in a Christian home, and I got into comics. I was Ninja Turtles and then Batman the show, but then I got into like actual comics. And I went to I don't know if it's Toys R Us or some toy store that I bought some Batman toys, but then I also bought like a comic, and it was during the time when Batman, his back was broken. Bane had broken his back, and that one dude, Azul, or I don't remember the dude's name, but he was standing in for Batman, and he had like the armor, and it was like a super graphic time in the comics. I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was, no, it wasn't him. I don't know who it was, but basically this comic book was really graphic, really dark. I mean, and again, this is like, like my mom saying this, right? So I'm like a little kid, and like I remember Batman's like on top of the train, and there's this fight and this whole thing, and my mom like looks at my comic and she's like, what the heck is wrong with this thing? This isn't for kids. And she like flips to the back, and there's like a note from the writer or the creator. I don't know if it was the artist or the writer, probably the writer. This would make more sense if it's the writer. And he's basically like, yeah, this thing, and it's dark and it's gritty, and if you don't like it, then just don't buy it. This isn't for you. We're not making little kids come. And he has this like super intense, like F you kind of, if you don't like this type letter to the reader. And my mom's like, well, then fine. Then we will just throw this in the trash can. And so I'm not trying to make fun of mocking my mom, but I'm just over exaggerating the response because I'm a kid like, no. So she like throws it away. And it's like years before I can actually get back into comics because of this. So I decide I'm going to make my own comics. And I don't know which came first, because there's another similar story to where around the same time, I think before this, that's when I decided I'm going to make my own comic book company. Because before that, just more casually, like I was a huge fan of Power Rangers. And then we weren't allowed to watch them anymore. So like all the parents in the church got together and decided that Power Rangers, it was like weird. Like they had this big meeting. I remember all the kids were in another room playing. All the parents were in this meeting, all around these tables. And they like did a vote. It was kind of weird. It kind of, the way I'm describing it sounds cultish. It wasn't that way. We weren't in that kind of church. And like, at the end of it, all but one family decided not to let their kids watch Power Rangers anymore. And so, of course, that one kid just got the crap kicked out of him all the time, because he'd be like after Rangers at night, like playing Power Rangers. Right? We're not allowed to play. He's like, I'm allowed to do it. Da, da, da. And so we're like, we hate you. So we weren't allowed. So I started making my own Power Ranger comic books and stories from my friends, and I called them the Christian Rangers, because it was like, I'll just take Power Rangers and copy it and change the word power to Christian, and change it from like their stuff being powered from like crystals and energy and all these things that my parents have an issue with, and I'll make it that it's based off the armor of God. And so I started drawing. It was terrible drawings. So I started drawing and writing my own Christian Rangers. And eventually, it wasn't too long before I changed it to Christian Warriors, because Christian Rangers, I think what it was, I didn't like that because our church had a thing called Royal Rangers. And so I felt like making it Christian Rangers, it sounded too much like Royal Rangers, and I don't want it to sound like a church program. So I changed it to Christian Warriors and basically had my own Power Rangers, right? And again, I did that kind of casually as a kid. And then a few years later, then I get this Batman comic book and it gets taken away from me. And like, that's it, right? That's like the final straw. And I'm like, I'm going to make my own Christian comic book company. And it's BACC, Born Again Christian Comics. And these were going to be like wholesome comics for that would also teach you stuff, and they were going to be good, and like all my friends would be able to read them, type thing. And so I start designing all these characters. I get away from the Power Ranger motif, and I basically start copying DC Comics at this point. And so I make like Christian Warrior, who originally they were all these little Christian Warriors. That's diluted down to one character. And he couldn't decide if he was Superman or Iron Man. So he was basically like this Superman character who also had power armor, which just is kind of ridiculous if you think about it. Like, why does Superman need armor? It would literally just fall off of him in his battles because he's so strong. So then again, there's a cosmic armor Superman now. So there we go. So I create, and I become at a young age obsessed with this idea of creating a comic book company. And literally, like, I remember us looking to buy a home, and I'm like 11 years old. And I'm like, I need an office. So anytime my parents are looking at a home, I'm like, no, this one won't do. There's nowhere I can have an office. And then I'm like, yeah, this house will be good. There's like this extra garage thing that I can have. Now, I couldn't have the regular garage because my dad does like woodworking stuff, and that's the garage gets turned into workshops. So I was like, oh yeah, there's like an extra, guest house or this, or that could be my office. And my parents are like, shut up. What are you talking about? You're not gonna have an office. You're freaking like 2 years old. And I'm like, I need an office. So I ended up just turning my bedroom into an office. So then I turned 12 and I get bought. A little bit before that, we're in Columbia, California. It's this ghost town. And I find this How to Draw. It's actually not, I always say How to Draw the Marvel Way, but it's not that one. It's a similar one. It's this like Klutz, whatever brand. And it's like a drawing Marvel Comics thing. And I learned from that point how to actually draw. Not well, but I learned how to draw. And so then things get hardcore. I turned 12 and like all my gifts basically, except for my weird aunt who buys me like gangster pants and some stupid stuff because she's a lunatic and has no clue about what I actually liked or whatever. Everything but her. Like my grandma and my parents, everyone gets me art stuff. My grandma gets me this amazing art set with like pencils and color pencils and graphite pencils and a gum eraser and all this kind of stuff, right? Up until this point, I'd been using like cheap little $5 color pencil sets and like from our homeschool supplies and all that kind of stuff. So I get this nice art set. I've got this book. I got some art pads, and I just go to town and I basically start recruiting. Like my friends have to learn how to draw, and I'm just obsessed with creating a comic book company. And this becomes my life. Like I literally, if I wasn't drawing comics, like I completely, like Gary Vee talks about how he punted school. I completely punted school. Like all I did was draw. So we were homeschooled in the beginning, and our first class was Bible. So my mom would go through all this Bible stuff, and she wasn't really strict. So like as long as I could answer questions at the end, that's all she kind of cared about. And so she didn't force me to like sit and listen. So I would draw. So for that first 40-something minute Bible class, I would draw. And then after that, we'd go into, I remember during spelling tests, I literally would have my sheet of paper, and I would never tell her I was done with the word. So she'd say, I don't know, what's a good spelling word? Republic. I don't know if that was a word or not, but like Republic. And I'd like really quick, I didn't give a crap. I couldn't spell. I still can't spell. So I'd like just really quick. And then on the margins, I'd be drawing. And by the time I'd get done, and then I wouldn't say like, okay, done. So she just, wait a while, and she'd get distracted. And then she'd say, okay, next work. Or next word, and she'd do the next word. I just scribble something down really quick without putting much effort. I failed all these. I got F's on every single spelling test I did, like almost ever, until high school. And then I'd be drawing, right? I remember one time I didn't draw, and I actually tried, and I got like a C-, and it was like, see, look what you can do if you put your mind to it. I'm like, I don't give a crap. I just want to draw. And this is all I did. I drew all day, every day. You can ask my mom. I was drawing like 12 hours a day. Like during the summer, this wasn't school. Like during the summer, we have a swimming pool. My sister's in the pool all day long. She has friends over. I don't have friends over. I'm hardly swimming. I'm swimming like an hour a day. She's swimming like 8 hours a day. I'll go out and just to take a break. Like I'm starting to get a cramp in my hand or something. And all I did was write and draw, write and draw, write and draw. I was writing out my storylines, drawing, improving. And I wasn't just drawing, like I was like trying to get better. I would be like, okay, I remember like being like, okay, I suck at shadowing. So I'd have my comics, right? And I'd go through all of them and I'd find all these like dramatic shadowing. Be like, I'm going to draw these. I'm just going to copy it and learn the shadowing. Oh, I suck at posing. Let me find all these dynamic poses and copy these. And I was doing everything I could to get better, to get better, to get better, to get better. And then I was like, I'm going to have a company. I'm going to hire all my friends. We're going to get an office. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to go to work every day and we're going to draw and talk about comics, and it's going to be amazing. And I did this for years. And then I got to the point where I'm like, I'm never going to be able to actually produce comics like really good, if I don't learn how to do coloring like on a computer. So then I get into high school, and same thing in high school. I'm just drawing. I always have a sketchbook. All my classes for like freshman and sophomore year, mostly freshman year, some and sophomore, I'm just drawing. That's all I'm doing. Drawing. My teacher's like, I wasn't paying attention. Well, I have this thing where like, I actually can pay attention better if I'm like doing something, not if it requires me to think, like not multitasking, but like if I really want to hear something, like my best thing to do, is either to like drive or draw, or now I'll do Minecraft. I'll just aimlessly build and dig things because I can like process it better. I think it's my ADD or AD. I would be ADD. I don't have ADHD. I can sit for long hours and just stare at a wall and get lost in my mind. And I would just I remember where I was going with this. But I would just draw all day during class, and this is all I did. I just drew over and over and over. And then I drew all throughout high school, but my freshman year I got into an animation class, and I went from going, I want to have a comic book company, to I want to have an animation company. So I ended up starting like all year I was animating, and I was learning how to animate. So I learned how to simplify my drawings. And this was actually really good for me because like I kind of hit a cap. Like I wasn't getting better. Now I know now that the reason I wasn't getting better is because I didn't know how to learn how to draw better. So like I kind of hit my cap as far as like copying other drawings and stuff. And what I should have done, just like I did at that one summer, whereas I was like, I need to learn how to get better at shading. But rather than just going and copying, I should have learned the fundamentals. I should have learned, and I did. I took tons of basic art classes. I did get better, but like I really should have gotten hyper focused on like, okay, take a ton of anatomy classes, learn how to draw a woman, learn how to draw a man, learn how to draw a fist, learn how to draw a child, learn how to draw, animals. Like I should have broken them down and taken individual like courses. And I did try, like I did try to do the Jack Kirby correspondence school, and I don't remember what happened with that, why I ended up not being able to do it, because I was young and didn't have the money, and my parents thought the idea of a couple $100 to do a correspondence drawing school was crazy. And I got to the point where I was like, oh, animation, okay, more people watch movies in animation than they do, so I can have a bigger influence, and like it's simpler drawings. So I was able to simplify my drawing style. I'm like, cool, now like there is no good enough. Like I'm a good enough artist to be able to do animation. I can do this. Like, so I came up with like my animation style, and I just started animating. And this was like freshman year, sophomore year, I kind of switched. I was still drawing, but now I'm like doing these like animation characters and I'm redoing my storylines. I was obsessed with this idea of the perfect storyline. I spent so much time. We had these flower beds with rocks that my dad wanted taken out, and like if we got in trouble or something, we'd have to go do it. Well, I just volunteered to do it. I had this little school chair and the bucket, and I'd go out there for hours every week, multiple times a day, and I would just fill these buckets, 2, 3, 4, these like big 5-gallon buckets. I just fill these buckets with rocks. I just sit there and just take rocks and put in the bucket and just fill the bucket. And he wanted to move to wherever we're moving them. I'd go dump the bucket and do it again and fill. And then I didn't like having to stop. So I'd get 2 or 3 buckets and I'd fill those before I'd have to dump them. And I'm just sitting there running my storylines through like a movie, just like Robert Rodriguez would with his scripts. And then I would be playing what it is, and and then I'd read something and I'd be like, I like this element from this thing. How can I incorporate this? And I'd redo stuff, and I was constantly working on the perfect. I have like letters to myself where it's like, you write a letter to yourself like in X amount of years and you open it, and then it's like always has something like, oh, you better have the perfect storyline figured out by then. And I just was obsessed with this idea. So then I get in, like I said, freshman year, I get in this animation class. It switches to animation. I'm doing all this stuff. I created some new characters for anime. And then so that expanded everything. I'm drawing, I'm writing. And then my junior year, I get into film school. It was a trade school. It's called CART, Center for Advanced Research and Technology. It was an hour and a half away. I lived in Atwater, California. This was in Clovis, California. So I had to drive through 2 counties, so Merced County, Madera County, and then Fresno County, multiple cities that I passed, an hour and a half. I'm a junior in high school, and I just get dropped off in Fresno, basically, and I'm driving myself. So I'm commuting an hour and a half a day, or twice a day. So an hour and a half to school. I went to what was called our homeschool, not to be confused with actual homeschool, which was just like a regular high school, and I took like math, English, well, not English, actually, math, science, like those basic core classes. And then in the second half of the day, I drove myself over to CART, and they had like biomed, they had Cisco networking, they had multimedia, which is what I was in. They had engineering, marketing, they had all these different courses. I was in the multimedia one, and I went and I wanted to do, because remember I told you earlier that I was like, I can never go as far as I want to do unless I learn how to like color on a computer. So I was going to do the graphic design one and learn how to color on a computer. That was my goal. So then I get to it, and so I'm doing all this animation. I'm going to school. I'm going to learn this graphic design so I can get back into comic stuff. But my dad was a youth pastor off and on, and he always wanted to do like video stuff, and he just never really could figure it out. And so like he'd get a camera, and we were practicing, we were going to do human video. There's all these different things, and he just never really quite got around to figuring the video thing out. And so then it came time where we had to pick, like our first project, everyone just kind of did whatever. And then it was like, oh, you have to pick either the multimedia track or the video track. And I was like, well, I want to do all this comic stuff, but I feel like this video stuff, like I could help my dad out with like youth, and I feel like there's potential of stuff I could do that I couldn't do if I was just doing the graphic stuff, where that limits me a little bit more. So I picked media. And I'm like, I don't know though. And I was like thinking about maybe I could switch back over, but I wanted to do it. And we did our first video project. I remember we do a project, and because it was multimedia. So we get a credit for either multimedia or graphic design, depending on which one track we picked. And then we also had, so as far as like our transcript, we had multimedia or graphic design, which was a class. And then we had psychology and English. And I feel like there was one more. I didn't take English at my regular school because I took English there. So instead of like learning about Odysseus and Hercules and all this kind of stuff, we were learning about like Batman, like Frank Miller's Batman, and all these other like The Matrix and all this stuff, and like writing like ridiculous college level essays about these movies and everything. It was awesome. And of course we also had psychology. So we were like learning about the psychology behind the hero's journey. And then English, we'd have to like write these essays, and then we'd write these scripts and turn them in, and to either be made into a movie project or be made into a graphic novel. And so we're doing all this. So I know it was like, I thought it was 4. So we had, that's what it was. So it was 3. We had 4 teachers. So it was English, psychology, and then like I said, you either had, so there was a graphic design and graphic and web design, or like media productions. And so I was in the media productions one because I didn't want to learn the web stuff as much. So yeah. Anyways, so I'm like, oh, I'm probably gonna switch. My buddy Adam Haas, he started out with me in media productions, and then after the first or second project, because our teacher was kind of a doof, he was kind of an idiot, to be honest. So he actually switched out of it over to the graphic design. But I was like, after that first project, I was hooked. I'm like, no, I'm a filmmaker. Like, I'm gonna now. So I went from, I'm gonna have a comic book company, and that was years. Then I was like, I'm gonna have an animation company, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna have a film company. Like, I'm gonna make movies. Like, this is way easier than animation. I just have to turn the camera on. Like, I don't have to draw everything. And I got really quickly on. I got obsessed with like visual effects and stuff like that, so we could like do all this stuff. And it was during the time of like the first Spider-Man movie came out, and we went, and was it the first one? I don't know. A Spider-Man movie came out, and we went and saw that as a class field trip. We had amazing field trips. We had the first Lord of the Rings movie came out, and we went and saw that. I almost got run over by a semi-truck, jumped in the middle of an oncoming traffic over a hedge, and I couldn't see on the other side, and boom, a semi-truck was coming right at me. That was fun. We went and saw, as a class, the second Star Wars movie. So Attack of the Clones came out. So it was this great time where all these movies were coming. It was the first Spider-Man movie. I remember now, because I remember the first trailer we saw was, he did like the web between the Twin Towers, but then by the time the movie came out, they took all that stuff out because that was the year of 9/11 and the World Trade stuff. So that happened in the middle of the school year. So anyways, we do our first project. I'm like, I'm a filmmaker now. And so then I become into that. So I'm writing scripts, I'm learning visual effects, I'm learning camera techniques and all this kind of stuff. And then that same year I end up, randomly, a movie is getting made in my grandma's little podunk town of Chowchilla. They're making a movie there, and she's a real estate agent. So they come to the office and, hey, we need to like help with getting all these locations around town. And so she gets put in charge of it, because at that time I think she was kind of in the process of retiring, so she'd gone down to like part-time. Like, oh, I'll give it to Faye, because she's, the only not full-time realtor at that point. So they give it to her, and she knows everyone in town. And so she's like, hey, my grandson is in film school, could he get a job? And they're like, yeah, we'll give him as an intern. So me, my buddy Adam Haas, and then another friend, Lucas Scott, and then also a fourth friend who wasn't part of my film school, who just was like the guy I made do all my film stuff with me. And he was an artist and wanted to do comic book stuff, his name was Mark Hawking. We all got hired on as production assistants. I, like a couple weeks before it started, so production assistants, it was free. We just, we were there, we helped out with whatever. So how it ended up happening is I got promoted and I actually hired as a boom operator. So instead of just being a production assistant, I was the guy who held the pole with the microphones. I actually got paid now. So I'm now getting paid minimum wage. Lucas Scott ended up just staying a production assistant the whole time. He was a trooper. He dealt with all kinds of crap and stuff just for the experience, and he's amazing. Adam Haas ended up backing out. He couldn't do it. His parents wouldn't let him because we were going to have to miss school. And how it worked out, it was during like Easter break or whatever, and he was going to end up, I don't know. So it ended up where he just wasn't last minute. He couldn't do it. And then my other friend, Mark Hawking, he did it for a few weeks. And then once he figured out he wasn't getting paid, he was out. He's like, I'm not doing this for free. So it ended up just being me and Lucas Scott. And Luke, was a production assistant, and I was the boom operator. So we got really good experience off of that. And yeah, man, we were just trying to make our movies and do our thing. And that kind of was like that whole phase. I will say something, because it'll lead up. I'm going to take a break here from this, but I will say something that I remember our teacher talking about how a good way to make money with your video stuff is to do wedding videos. And that's a hard industry to break into, but wedding videos are easy money because, you just start off, you can do like $500 for a wedding, which $500, in high school was like, that was ridiculous. Like, you wouldn't make that much a month if you worked, you're working a job. And I remember thinking, I would never do that. I would never do a wedding video, which is funny because when I come back, the next part of my story is going to be about how I started up Neat Ideas Video Production and Services and did 85% of wedding videos. All right, so that is kind of like the background. The stage has been set. Now, come back tomorrow and you'll hear about how I kind of fell into my first business. So you heard about how I always wanted to have like a comic book company, but tomorrow we're going to talk about how I kind of fell into starting a video production business, and that kind of sets the stage for those past episodes you've listened to about me getting into direct response marketing and all that kind of stuff, learning to market my video business, and that'll make it all make more sense. So boom, see you tomorrow.